So what are the cheap magician's tricks that LGATs, large group awareness programs, use? EST, landmark, and anything that ends in Oni Robbins. And why have cult scholars been warning about them for a long time? Well, one thing is chanting, and they're not the only group that uses chanting. I'm going to read to you about the call and response, the power of group chanting, from my next book, The Culting of America. Pre-sales open August 5th. One of the oldest tricks in the book for building group identity is repetition and rhythm. Leaders use call and response chants like verbal choreography, think God is good in churches, 4 more years at rallies, or no justice, no peace at protests. That back and forth rhythm pulls people in, amplifies the leader's power, and reinforces group unity. Science backs this up. Practiced around the world throughout human history, group chanting and singing lowers stress hormones, triggers oxytocin, the love or bonding hormone, and can induce mystical experiences. It also enhances social flow. Flow state, coined by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in 1975, is loosely defined as the optimal psychological state in which a person is completely absorbed in a task, excluding all other thoughts. Social flow involves interdependence with others to achieve this state. Fostering a shared sense of purpose and enjoyment, described it as a state where the ego falls away. Great for creativity, but not so much for critical thinking. Leaders exploit this effect. The trance-like rhythm of chanting lowers critical thinking, making people more open to suggestion and craving that euphoric feeling again. Dr. Janja Lalich places chanting alongside prayer marathons, hypnosis, sleep deprivation, and guided imagery as coercion tactics, while Margaret Singer explains how forced hyperventilation from shouting can induce an altered state. In The Children of God, which I wrote this book, Uncultured, about growing up in the Children of God, and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army, where we also do chanting. You can get copies, signed copies of Uncultured attached here. In Children of God, we had mandatory chants. An adult would walk in and yell, "It's a revolution!" And we would have to throw 3 fingers in the air, Mockingjay style, and shout back, "For Jesus!" over and over again. When you add movement, the impact intensifies. NIH research shows that when people chant and move together, their brainwaves literally sync up, a phenomenon called interpersonal synchrony. That social or group flow makes people feel like they're merging into a larger purpose. Great for both cohesion and control. In the military, chanting cadences while running or marching do the same, reinforcing discipline and identity. That's why that parade that we all saw was so obviously a protest. In Uncultured, I write about how boot camp felt eerily familiar to marching down hallways of my youth in the cult singing Onward Christian Soldiers during midnight drills. As a soldier, the chant morphed into phrases like, "When my right foot hits the ground, all I hear is that killing sound." Same technique, different setting. Whether you're chanting "Praise Jesus," "Hoorah," "Go Hawks," or "USA, USA," the goal is the same. Make the message automatic. Large group awareness trainings like Landmark Forum use the same technique, hyping participants into chanting affirmations like "live your best life" and "say yes to your greatness" that break down resistance and instill the program's mindset. Mega churches like Hillsong rely on repetitive worship songs to generate emotional highs, blurring spiritual experience with manipulation. Schools do it too. Kids recite the Pledge of Allegiance before they're old enough to understand the word indivisible. Sports fans scream team chants in stadiums, locked in wave of synchronized energy. Even your spin class instructor knows how this works. "Who's ready to crush it?" they yell, and without thinking, the class shouts back, "We are!" And suddenly you're all pedaling a little harder. AA meetings begin and end with everyone saying the Serenity Prayer in unison, or the Lord's Prayer, depending on the regional culture. And don't forget that Namaste and Om at the end of your yoga class. The more you say something out loud, the more ingrained it becomes, and that's the trick. When you're caught up in the rhythm, you're not just repeating words, you're feeling them. And once that happens, stopping to question what you're actually agreeing to gets a whole lot harder. So that there is just one magician's trick. And now we are going to read from The Cults in Our Midst by Dr. Margaret Singer about her concerns. What goes on in an LGAT? On federal court orders, I have attended 6 large group awareness training sessions, and I have interviewed dozens of persons who have attended these. She names a whole bunch. She's also served as an expert witness, blah, blah, blah. Here is what they do. The programs and trainer tend to last at least 4 and usually 5 days. They are described as seminars and sound very much like special college courses. The highly confrontational and psychological aspects generally are not mentioned beforehand, nor is it mentioned that a whole new theory of how the world works will be inculcated in attendees. The program's trainers and leaders typically get agreement from the participants they will not tell anyone about the processes that occur. To do so will spoil it for your friends, family, and coworkers when they take the course. Tell them what you got out of it, trainers advise. This means be vague about the actual content and provide glowing endorsements telling others that the training turned your life around. But do not tell them how emotional, dramatic, confrontational, and unnerving the sessions can be for some people. Because of this promise, consumers who buy and attend these seminars do so without information about how psychologically, socially, and sometimes physically stressing the event can be. The following outline description is a composite of what goes on in the course of many LGAT sessions. Day 1 is usually devoted to demonstrating the leader's absolute authority. The leader, often called the facilitator or trainer, immediately takes control of the setting with a demeanor that suggests he is a powerful, in-charge person and no one is to challenge what he says. We won't be able to read the whole thing. Okay. Day 2. Day 2 focuses on instilling the new philosophy the LGAT is teaching, the worldview, if you will. The well-known LGAT claim that you have caused everything that ever happened to you, from choosing your parents to breaking your leg, from getting yourself jilted to having been molested by your stepfather as a child. This is blaming individuals for institutional failures. Day 3. Day 3 is usually devoted to exercises, often trance-inducing guided imagery, cheap magician tricks, in which attendees are urged to recall all the disappointments of life since early childhood. By the end of the 3rd day, participants have been opened up psychologically. Day 4 is one in which much group sharing occurs, and the leader begins to change from the stern, domineering taskmaster into a seductive, charming, loving daddy or mommy who wants you to buy the next courses. Legal cases have revealed that trainers' promotions and even their very jobs hinge on how many of those in the first course they lure into purchasing the next courses. Day 5. Day 5 is one of lightness. There's dancing after restroom and lunch breaks. Much effort is put into getting you to sign up for the next and more expensive course. All participants are told to come back for a post-training meeting with the company and staff where you will get more selling. The impact. What can be upsetting to certain people in such LGAT sessions is that in these 4 or 5 intense, exhausting days, they become flooded with more emotion and conflict than they can handle all at once. Up until this time, they've handled their lives in their own way, but at these training sessions, they've had to look at their entire past in a brief but enforced way. This is quite different from psychotherapy, for instance, where the therapist and patient progress more slowly in order to allow the patient to deal with whatever she or he wants or needs to at a manageable pace. If they had known ahead of time of the intensity and psychological depths of some of these exercises, many have told me, they would never have gone or bought the training. They had no true idea of the intensity of the situation, the effects of group pressure, or the personal fatigue that comes from LGAT sessions, and they simply expected an ordinary educational experience. Even though printed statements are now given out to participants by several LGATs and training programs, they don't really warn you. Finally, I've included LGATs in this book because they represent forms of coordinated programs of intense persuasion and group pressure. I'm not discussing here the many excellent skill training, educational, and motivational programs that are used in business and industry for practical results. But apart from those programs, there are many training schemes that employ thought reform processes and can harm employees and engender lawsuits for employers. They are a modern-day corporate version of social and psychological influence techniques that make people deployable without their knowledge or consent. Precisely my objection to cults. And she was sanctioned by the APA for writing this.